Hello, everybody. I think that this is all working. Let me double check here. I got to make sure that everything is up and running here as I wait for people to join in on the live feed here on YouTube. So thank you so much for joining me. My name is Shannon Hernandez. I go by the Shan Man, radio broadcaster, podcaster, and a podcast producer. And we have got a packed, I don't know if it's a packed live feed today, but today we're going to be talking about SEO for your podcast. So if you are here in the live feed, do me a favor. Number one, I need you to do a couple things for me, all right? Just so we can get people to come in on the live feed and join in. I need you to give this video a thumbs up down on the video watch page that you're on right now. Do that for me so that I can get this, so that people can see that this video is something that they should be watching. And based off of last week's feedback, the people enjoyed the live feed. So that was a very cool thing. So leave a thumbs up for it. And of course, make sure that you share this out onto your Twitter feed and share it onto your Facebook. Give some opportunity for some people to come in, learn a little bit more about podcasting, and we will come in and get that all started and ready to go. So those are a couple of the housekeeping things that I would love for you to do before we jump in to today's topic. Now, before I jump into today's topic, I want to apologize to you very briefly because I have some air conditioning issues today. Of course, I think a lot of you guys know that I live in Arizona. And the temperature, let's see here, the temperature today is 105. So the noise you're hearing in the background right now is my portable air conditioner that is running right now. So I have no AC going on in the entire condo unit right now. The blower went out, and that's just been something that is it's just been kind of the last 24 hours have been a pain. And I was supposed to have a guy that was going to come out and look at it at 3 o'clock, which is 4:30 right now in Arizona. So about an hour and a half ago, and he was not able to make it out. So he's got to come out tomorrow. And tomorrow is 4th of July here in the United States. So if you're watching somewhere else around the world, tomorrow's the 4th of July. Everyone is off. And so he said he would come out tomorrow and check it out. So tomorrow we got to fix whatever's going on because it is going to get really, really hot tomorrow as well. And I had made a plan to go out of town. That was just, not going to happen. I got to wait around for this guy. So I see a lot of you guys are here. And of course, if you're in the chat right now and I see you guys in the chat, say hello. And I see that you are saying hello. I see Chairman Suda is here. Mrs. Suarez returning back. Richard O, good to see you. Shanna Bowman. I think that's how you say your name, Shanna. You saw my post on my community tab on YouTube. So now you are here. So that is very good. Lee Dickey TV, what's going on? Glad that you are here. And like I said, for all of you guys who are here, make sure that you are sharing this out onto your Twitter feed, your Facebook feed. I'm not too sure how many people are going to show up today, but hopefully we have quite a crowd like we had last week, because this is very, very interesting and valuable stuff that we will be talking about today as far as SEO for your podcast. All right. So if you ever want to reach out to me, you're more than welcome to reach out to me on Twitter. My handle is at the Shan Man. So it's just at the Shan Man, and we can get started the conversation over there if you ever need something. And I do check Twitter every day. My Twitter is not as active as it was back in the past whenever Twitter was a big thing, but I do get people who reach out and ask questions via Twitter. So you're more than welcome to reach out to me. And lastly, before we get started, as we wait for people to jump in, there is a link down in the description of this particular video where you can ask your questions. And what I would prefer is that if you have a question that you need to ask so that you're not losing yourself and I don't lose the question inside of the chat, go to that link, leave the question, and I have the Google Sheets form pulled up right here so that I can see who is asking questions. And I'm going to answer some questions that I did not get to last week. We're going to do that today. We're going to do that just real briefly, answer a couple of questions before we get started, and we'll do that. All right. So now that we have some housekeeping all completed, I see that George is here, Pocono Outdoors guy. If you guys do not know who George is one of my commenters here on this YouTube channel, and he's a podcaster and video podcaster. George is doing some amazing things. If you're not into fishing, I understand that, because that's what his channel is mainly all about. But what I would love for you to do is to check out George's channel, because George has he practices basically what he preaches in terms of how he promotes his podcast and what tips he has taken from this particular channel. I would say George is doing a lot of the things on his own, but he always comes here and he's taking tips and implementing them onto his channel. So what I recommend is that you go follow and subscribe to Pocono Outdoors Guy, and he will help you out. And at least he will help you out in terms of what he's doing, how he does that. And of course, you can look at his YouTube channel, or I'm sorry, his Facebook channel as well. Shayna, I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. Shayna, it's not Shanna, it's Shayna. So Shayna, I'm excited that you are here and excited that there are other people here. Okay, so again, if you have questions, leave them on that link down in the description below as we get started. So before we get started, I want to answer a couple of questions that I did not get to last week. We didn't have a whole lot of time. So I'm going to answer just a couple of those today, and then we'll get into the SEO part. And then I will do a full Q&A at the very end of this. So we'll do that. I see Shelly Aaron is here. Shelly Aaron is one of my, I've known Shelly for quite a few years, actually. She's a podcaster and podcast producer too. So say hello, everyone say hello to Shelly, who is here. I'm so glad that you are here today. So we're going to go ahead and answer some questions. And as I said, for those new people who are showing up, make sure you like this video and share it out to your Twitter feed, Facebook feed, whatever, and get other podcasters here to help you out. So we're going to answer these questions last week, and we had quite a few that I did not get to. And so I want to address those real briefly. So I want to address last week, there was a gentleman named Kyle Brensel who showed up. And he asked the question, is there a mic that plugs into a phone charger that makes the quality sound better? And to answer that question from last week, I think what he is referring to is there like a lapel mic that plugs into the phone charger or the phone charger input? And I do know there are lapel mics that will do that. I don't know depending on the phone that you are utilizing, depending on your Android, depending on your iPhone, Android, whatever, you're going to have to find the right input that will do that. And I personally have used lapel mics for the phone itself, and I just don't like the way the sound is. The sound of a lapel mic is, you're not getting that rich sound that you would get like when you're using a condenser microphone. So what I would recommend that you do is that you just figure out another way to do it. The Zoom H6, if you're looking for something that's portable, the Zoom H6 portable recorder is a great way to take something on the road with you, but you would have to buy some microphones. I believe I have the Zoom H6 listed on my website at theshanman.com if you are interested in that. But as far as using the phone, I use my iPhone. I've actually used my iPhone at concert venues and just used the onboard microphone, and it comes out really, really great. Not as great as like say a condenser microphone, but it's still something that you can use. So thank you for that question, Kyle. Another question came in from the username Community. The question was, how do podcasters deal with no feedback, which is something that I think a lot of people out there are probably experiencing, is that they don't get a whole lot of feedback when they're posting questions out, or I'm sorry, not posting questions, but posting content out, especially their podcast, into the internet. So how do you deal with no feedback? My answer to that is that you need to start pumping out more content. And in terms of it's not necessarily pumping out more audio, you need to pump out more content. And that's part of what we will talk about today with SEO and what we could do with that. Let's answer one more question from Warren Keith. Hi, Shannon. One last question. Let's see here. This is from last week. Do you have any program recommendations if someone wanted to do a multiple person podcast but remotely? So this is the question that continues to get asked countless times. And I don't know if I feel like I answered this last week, but I'll answer it again today. And so if you're looking for program recommendations, I know that there are a number of programs out there that you may have to pay for. I know there's Zencastr that will allow you to do, like a two-person interview type of podcast. But I don't like Zencastr because you're dealing with an internet connection, and the internet connection, I've heard so many Zencastr interviews that they just don't come off as clean as what it would be if you were to go ahead and do a podcast where you're utilizing Skype, you're utilizing the Yamaha MG10XU mixing board, you're using your microphone, and you're utilizing Adobe Audition or some type of audio editing software or a DAW, digital audio workstation. So I have videos on my YouTube channel that show you exactly how to record Skype phone calls that way so that you can have a multiple person podcast and you can invite more people in. And the audio quality is bar none probably the best. It's actually as close as it's going to get to a radio broadcast. This is very similar to what we're running at the radio stations. So that's something that I really think that you should consider. If you're not investing in your equipment, it's not necessarily saying you're not investing in your podcast, but when you invest in the equipment for your podcast, it makes the jobs so much easier for you later down the line so that you don't have to worry about it. It's a one-time investment that can have multiple returns over the course of your podcasting journey. So just keep that in mind. I would work towards at least trying to get into something that will be useful. Someone brought up the Rode Procaster last week. That is a wonderful piece of equipment. I don't have it. I've seen many reviews on it. But for the price that you're getting that board, it's too expensive for me for something that you could utilize by using the Yamaha MG10XU, a microphone, and Skype along with Adobe Audition. That would be it. Okay, so I hope that answers your questions. So we got those 3 questions out of the way, and I've got some questions today from Lennox Addo, Paintbrush and Dice podcast, and Mrs. Suarez. And again, if you have questions, you can go ahead and leave them. Hit that link down in the description that says ask a podcast question, and it'll show up here on my end, and I'll be able to answer that question for you. So I see some people here. Bearberg just showed up. Lee Dickey TV. I used my phone in the past. I prefer my proper desk setup though. I've used the Mova LV1 lav mic. It's a condenser and needs an interface. It's an option, so that's a very good option. So thank you, Lee, for so much for sharing that out. It's just going to depend on the equipment that you're going to get. Like you say, you do need that interface option, and it does sound a lot better. It's hard when you're dealing with something like a phone and this is your only power source. And if you're in the middle of an interview that's about about an hour long, it will drain the battery. And let's say you get something that's really good, a really good piece of audio, and the phone dies. I mean, that's just another thing that you're going to have to deal with. So it's just better to have something like the Zoom H6 or some type of interface that will allow you to record your podcast. Okay. Let's see here. Bayerberg says, I'm not sure if the Procaster is still available, though. I don't know. Again, that's something that I'm not paying attention to too much with the Procaster. It's a cool piece of equipment, but it's, like I said, you're going to be utilizing the same type of stuff here on like a Yamaha MG10XU. That will definitely make your job a lot easier. Okay. Let's see here. Shayna says, I use my phone all the time for my podcast, but obviously I prefer a condenser mic. Yeah. So you could get a condenser mic eventually, but one of the cool things about starting your podcast, and if you're doing it on your phone, is that people can see the progress of where you have gone with your podcast in terms of quality and how it sounds. And if you started out with just a phone, because I hear many podcasters using, say, their phone, and they're uploading directly into something, say, like Anchor, and it sounds okay. I mean, but if you want to step up the quality and you want to deliver the value that you expect to get back in return, then I recommend that you invest in the value itself so that you can deliver the value. That's going to be the most important thing. And I'll talk a lot about value here shortly on the SEO discussion. So thank you for that, Shayna. I really do appreciate it. So again, I want to go ahead and shoot that call to action out right now. Let you guys know to share this out on your Twitter feed. Let people know to come on in and watch this live feed today as we will talk about SEO discussions. So get a piece of paper out, a pencil or pen or whatever, and let's go ahead and take some notes. I have written out my notes here today compared to last week's notes. Compared to last week's notes where they're all on pad. I got to get my pen here. Hang on. So I've written them out today so that I could actually read my handwriting. So this will be very, very much be a lot easier for me to read. All right. So today we will talk about SEO and some of the best practices for SEO for you and your podcast. So first we have to define what SEO is for the person who doesn't understand what SEO is. What is SEO? SEO means search engine optimization. So what we are doing is we are creating content when we are a content creator like a podcaster, and that podcaster has to create content that search engines must be able to read in order to recommend your website, your podcast, or whatever to someone who is searching out a particular query on the internet. So that's what search engine optimization is whether it's creating the content on your own websites or your own platform so people can find you. And when they find you, they are finding you organically through search. And this is some of the best and easiest ways to get people to come in and subscribe and be drawn into your universe for your particular podcast. This is a topic that is, I will say it is, I wouldn't say it's controversial, but it's something that most podcasters really don't like to do. And it's actually one of the easiest things to do when it comes down to getting subscribers. You may not like what I have to say about SEO, but the truth of the matter is that these are the practices that are happening online that are giving people the results. So if I'm telling you that you have to do something the long way or you have to do something a certain way, it's not because I'm telling you because of my philosophy. I'm telling you because that is how the platform works. And you have to really adjust yourself to the platform in order to get the maximum visibility for your podcast. All right. So SEO, it means having a podcast discovered organically through online search engines. This can mean Google, Bing, Yahoo, and even Apple Podcasts and any other podcast, syndication platform that is out there. So just remember that, all right? SEO, search engine optimization, can be super detailed or it can be very basic. What we are going to be sharing with you today is going to be, I'm going to try and make a balance between what you absolutely need to have and what you can do better to create better search engine optimization for your website and your podcast, all right? So when we dive deeper into SEO and we talk about the optimization of a website, we're trying to attract people through what we call inbound marketing. That's what it is. It's inbound traffic. So you likely have done this in the past, right? You say, for instance, like today, we have the air conditioning out in my place, but I needed to do a search online. So what did I do? I went into Google and I searched out short cycling air conditioner problems. And I got a series of results that came up for me. Some of those results came up as blog posts. Some of those results came up as YouTube videos, and almost zero results came up as podcasts. This will be a great opportunity for someone to create a podcast around short cycling AC units and how to diagnose the problem in order to fix the AC unit. That would actually be a really good title of a podcast. All right. So that is what I'm talking about. How searchable is your podcast in terms of what is being titled inside of your website so that it can show up on Google, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or whatever. So that's something that I think you need to really understand when it comes down to SEO. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to optimize these titles and we're trying to optimize so much more. SEO refers to the titling of the content body that you have on your website. I know as podcasters, we want to focus so much on the idea that it's audio, but right now we do not have there's no option for Google or any search engine for any of those platforms to crawl audio so that it can be discovered by other people. There just still isn't that technology that is out there yet. As voice technology continues to improve, then maybe it will be an option. But for right now, we have to do it the old-fashioned way, and that is by providing show notes, all right? So this is all part of your SEO strategy. So when we create content and we create our audio, yes, it's already one thing that we got to do, but now we have to start developing and building in the philosophy, because the philosophy is all about the search engine itself. We have to build in the philosophy that we need to create text in order to get eyes and ears onto our podcast. All right. So that's what we need to focus on here. Okay. So what I have written down here says SEO refers to the titling and content within the body of your blog in order for search engines to recommend your site to someone who is searching the information. Then I have point number 3 here. SEO includes developing a website that can be trustworthy through content and backlinking. If you don't know what backlinking is, this is a very important aspect of SEO for your website. This means that when you create content inside of your website and you talk about it inside of, say you talk about it inside of your podcast, you need to be providing the links that direct people back to maybe those references or resources that go to another website. Now, I will say this, and don't get super crazy on this, but I will say this: the more you put backlinks to your blog or something like that that go back to another website, this allows Google to say, okay, this is a trustworthy website. It's providing reference for people to look at so that you can keep going and searching and run down that rabbit hole. And it's all because of the origination process that started on your website. So if you can create great backlinking, that's great. Now, does it mean that you have to backlink every word that is in the blog post? No, it doesn't mean that. But when you're talking in your podcast about a specific topic, you should probably think about saying, okay, you've heard podcasters say this in the past. I'll go ahead and put that link in the show notes for you. Don't forget to do that. Follow through on that promise so that you can go ahead and deliver that backlink that goes to someone's website or whoever is on your podcast. All right. Backlinking provides great trustworthiness. But here's the other thing about backlinking. Backlinking just doesn't mean that you're linking to someone else. It means someone else has to link back to you. So if you want to become a really trustworthy site where you can gain more traffic back to your website and someone is backlinking to you, that will allow Google to that'll allow signals to be sent to Google to say, okay, this website is now the authority website. We need to start referencing this. And that's why you will start seeing for particular keyword terms, your podcast episode or your website showing up in higher and higher and higher in rankings. So that's something that you should be thinking about. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a super expert on SEO, but what I do know is that a lot of this has to base itself on the density of your body of your text inside of the show notes that you're creating, and then the titling of the actual podcast episode itself on your blog. All right. We're going to talk about Libsyn here very shortly. So and how that all works with search engine optimization, because like I said, search and SEO still relates to, say, Apple Podcasts and Stitcher and all that. All right. So we'll talk about that here very shortly. All right. The next point I have here, it says SEO also relates to what you share on social media and how your content is viewed online. So what we're talking about here is if you've ever been on Facebook and you've seen an article that has come up in your news feed, all right, or you've seen in Twitter an article that has come up in your news feed, and you see the image, you have an image, right, and then you have the title of the actual blog post or whatever it may be, and that shows up. That's still SEO. That's search engine optimization that is being shared socially. All right. So when we share socially, we just don't want an image, and then we don't want we don't want people guessing. We just don't want to send an image with a link. We don't want that. We want to be able to share that link out that has that option for us to create the title and maybe sometimes a description. So you likely have seen inside of Facebook when it's the title of an article and then it's got a brief description. I don't know if they're still doing that. I think they still do that. And then sometimes above the title, it'll say like what website it came from. So it can say theshanman.com, something like that. So we need to have these things that are much it's down to the details. We have to put these details in order and in motion in order for people to start sharing, because then when we think about it in the future, we think about when people visit our website. This happens to me every day, almost every day. I know that someone visits my website on a particular topic on one of the podcasting articles that I've written, and when they share it out onto their Twitter feed or they share it onto their Facebook feed, and I see that there's a share that's going through, it describes what that blog post is all about. So your podcast, when you embed them in your blog post, should also have that specific titling. All right. So the more you get those shares out, the more reliable that particular blog post gets, and the more popular it starts showing up inside of your search engine. Okay. So let's go ahead. We're going to jump into the next step here, but I got to say hi to a couple people. 17 solid people who are here today. So it's good to see all of you guys. I see Andy Lyons just showed up. So Andy Lyons, hello to you. It's good to see you. And let's see, Mystic Mac says, I wish Facebook would let you podcast. Yeah. There are going to be some areas in which I can share with you about Facebook and how it's not necessarily a podcast, but how you can use it to leverage your podcast. I'm currently doing that. If you read my newsletter that I released today on my email newsletter list that I sent out today, this morning, it talks about how I am leveraging a certain platform. That particular platform is Facebook for what I am doing right here. So that is something that that you need to take into account, and that's all part of my monetization guide that I have listed on my website. If you didn't get that email, you didn't get that email, but maybe I'll share it again at another point in time. All right. So let's jump on over to how you can improve your SEO. All right. Let's see here. Let's see here. I want to look at a couple of comments here. Lee. I hope I'm saying it right. Is it Lee or Lay? I'm pretty sure it's Lee because I knew a friend named Lee at one point in time. Okay. Let me see. I'm going to go ahead and share out Bearberg. He sent out a link here for schema.org. Yeah, if you're a geeky geek person, you want to check out Schema. That's something that will help you out. You'll jump down the rabbit hole with that, but it's very, very important that you understand that. So thank you for sharing that, Bearberg. I really appreciate that. There's one important thing. Not a lot of podcasters use the schema.org micro formats. Yes. So something Google will shower you with gold for. Yes. So go look at Schema. That's something that is huge. Andy, can you do me a favor and put your question in? There's a link below this video that has, it's a link that will give you a form, and then you can put that question in the form because I'm going to lose it in the chat as I scroll up and down. So if you could please do that, that would help me out. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into ways to improve your podcast SEO. And if there are other ways that I haven't touched on here, like maybe Bearberg, you have something that you want to share, please leave it in the comments and I will help you. I will read that out for you guys. And of course, all of you guys can read it out as well. All right. So ways to improve your podcast SEO. Now, have you been featured on other people's podcasts? This is something that I think is very important for a lot of podcasters. Not only when you create a podcast are you just broadcasting your message, but you have to work it both ways. SEO kind of goes beyond just what is the technical. It also goes for what you're doing outside of your website. So if we show up on other people's podcasts and we are giving extreme value to those listeners in some way, shape, or form, then I think it's important that you start dropping links inside of that particular interview. Now, what happens whenever we drop those links? Okay, so people on that person's particular podcast who's interviewed you, they will now hear that and they'll drop back to your website because you maybe have mentioned something that you've listed on your website as value, okay? Now, here's the other thing. When you show up on someone's podcast, backlink on your website back to their podcast. They will do the same. When you have a mutual relationship between the two people, backlink it back and forth with each other. This will help with the improvement of the reliability of your website and your blog posts to show up higher in a Google search rank, okay? So that's something that is important. So create backlinks on your websites to areas on the web where you have been featured. If you go to theshanman.com, you can see on my particular page, it says down below, has been featured on. All right. And you'll see where I've been featured on Blabbermouth. I've been featured on certain podcasts. I've been featured with Search Engine Journal, all of these. And these are areas where I think people should be focusing their efforts is by making sure that you have those backlinks on your front page. All right. When someone searches the internet, they might stumble onto your website and they see that you are backlinked to somewhere else. So that counts for you as well as referring traffic. So just make sure that you're doing those backlinks. Develop backlinks on pages and particular blog posts, all right? These are important things that you need to implement every single time. If you go to my website and you see the front page or you check out a blog post, you'll see that I have tried to backlink to the areas in which that I find are more important, all right? So that's important, all right? Now, let's talk about show art because show art is just a lot more than just creating an image. A lot of it has to do with the metadata that is behind the image. And this is something that I had learned when I went to a conference a couple of years ago. And they said, how much are you optimizing the titles of your images inside of WordPress so that they can be discovered inside of Google? That's something that I think is really important. It's something that I now start doing on every one of the podcasts that I create. All right. Or any podcast that I am producing. So what I'm talking about is that say we create a piece of show work or show art. All right. And for every episode, you should have a piece of show art. If you don't, that's fine. But it's better if you want to start optimizing and developing and getting more traction through searchability when you create an image. That image, when you create it, say in Canva, or maybe you're doing it in Photoshop or Illustrator or wherever you're creating your images, when you save it as a file name, save it as maybe the title of the podcast itself, all right? Or save it with the keywords that are inside of maybe your podcast. Because believe it or not, I forget what I was trying to remember and look it up the other day about how much people look up images inside of Google. And it's just some ridiculous number how many people look up certain images and get traffic back to their website because they were searching for a particular image. So when you're optimizing the image and you're maybe it's a 1,000 by 1,000 pixel square, make sure that you have it optimized like you're creating a Pinterest image. All right. And when you create that Pinterest image, it says the title of something. And then, of course, maybe it's got the image of the individual. Andy does this really well. Andy Lyons does this really, really well with her. So go check out Andy's podcast and follow Andy on Instagram, because when she posts out her particular Instagram audiograms, she does this really well. But she also puts those images on her website. That's what you should be doing as well, because they will make your podcast searchable. We have to remember a lot of the times that we as humans have really, really short attention spans. And it's very hard to maintain attention on something in particular. Let's think about the last time you went to the grocery store. You start looking at the things in the grocery store as you walk in. When a grocery store has a sale on something, they want to get the stock moving out of somewhere, they put, say, the strawberries and the peaches and the blueberries and the grapes all in the front of the store. And they want you to buy those first. Or maybe it's just the milk that they want you to buy first. And then as you move back to the store, then those are the least important things. We all know you have to go to those things. So when we're trying to get people to do something, we're trying to grab their attention to do something. It's very similar when we're talking about looking at images on Google. If someone's scrolling in the images and they come across your image, they get torn away and they will be curious about what that is. So if they do a specific search and they come across that image, it's possible they might come across that podcast for you. So that's something that is important that you should do. All right. Let's see here. Oh, one thing you should be utilizing is the tagging feature inside of WordPress. So, whenever it says tag, I'm not talking about hashtags. I'm talking about tags themselves. They'll say tag in WordPress. You should be utilizing the tag process. It's like a file cabinet. So make sure that when you create a podcast, or you're creating a podcast, let's say it's a podcast on artwork, and let's say it's about vector art, and your podcast is all about utilizing Adobe Illustrator. You do this interview with, say, I don't know, let's just say his name is Dominic or something like that, and he's really good into vector art. You do that whole interview on your podcast about vector artwork, all right? And when you go to tag it inside of WordPress, you tag it in the section for SEO as vector artwork, or maybe Adobe Illustrator, so that when someone comes across a search that they're having a hard time finding, that they can go ahead and find out they're looking for Adobe Illustrator artwork, vector artwork, and your blog might come up. All right. So that's something that you have to really think about. And I'll give you some tools here very shortly, if you don't already know them, in order to utilize that tagging feature. All right. So that is something that is huge. I use tagging on my Kajabi website, and it works wonderfully. So make sure you're utilizing that particular function. So let me grab a drink of water here. I see Mike Henley just showed up. So thank you so much for showing up, Mike. Forgive me if it's a little loud today for those who are watching today. The AC is out in my place, so we're using the portable AC, which is nice. It's nice and 77 in this bedroom, but everywhere else in the house it is above 80. So it's a little hot today. Let's see here. I want to go in and see here. Read a couple comments here. It says Bearberg says, if you can't tweak your site to include those HTMLs, that's automatically built in. You're all set for perfect indexing in all web crawlers. So Bearberg sounds like I might have you on, Bearberg, so we could talk a little deeper on this. Sounds like you know what you're talking about. So we may have to do that and bring you in. It's pronounced Lee, spelt Lee. Okay, I'm glad I said your name right. Bearberg has a really great a comment there. In Photoshop, you go to File, Info. This is a place where you can add tags, your website name. Yes, so thank you so much for sharing that, Bearberg. That's really good. Now, if you're doing it in Canva, it doesn't work in Canva, I don't believe, but that is going to be something that you should be utilizing. All right. What do we got here? Jangy Man, great. Welcome here. Finally around for the live event. Hey, Shan and Shan Clan. So thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me that you're here. Share this live feed out on your Twitter and Facebook if you haven't done so. Get some more people in here and we can talk all about the SEO. All right, let's continue on. And I got a few more points and then we're going to jump to questions. All right. So Number 4, transcribing your podcast. I'm not going to stop talking about this. This is a big thing that you have to do. You're just going to have to transcribe your podcast if you're not creating dense show notes. All right. Keyword density for each blog post is so important for this. All right. Doesn't mean that you have to keyword stuff your blog post, but it does mean that you need to have some type of keyword density and have Google recognize that your website talks about a specific topic. All right. So when you transcribe your podcast, make sure that they are dense. There are a lot of podcasters out there that are doing this. In fact, I bring this story up many, many times. I've brought it up in my pre-recorded videos that you guys may have watched in the past, but I will bring it up again. About a year ago, I went out to the GoDaddy offices here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I went and saw my friend Heather Dobson. If you're in the social space, in the influencer space, you might know Heather. And Heather introduced me to some of the engineers and the specialists that were at GoDaddy. And one of the guys walks up to me and he says, "Oh, your name's Shannon." And he goes, "Oh, you're into podcasting." And his biggest gripe, he just like walked up and he said, "I don't understand this about podcasters." He was like genuinely frustrated by this. He says, "I don't understand this by podcasters." He goes, "Why don't podcasters transcribe their podcasts and put them on their website? Because the search discoverability on it alone is huge if they're not doing that." And I go, "I don't know, man." I go, I will go back to, again, my thoughts on last week when I said it. And I'm not trying to sound too mean or offend anyone, but podcasters are lazy. They just don't want to do it. This doesn't mean they're lazy because they don't have money. It's just that they're lazy. They just want to post the podcast and call it a day. And then they say, "I'm not getting traction to my podcast because of blank." We have to remember that we have to create these opportunities for ourselves. So transcribe your podcast in order to get noticed in the marketplace. If you're going to be delivering value in one area, deliver value in the other area. That's how you get noticed. So if you as a podcaster are delivering a specific type of podcast, your biggest goal is to deliver value, right? You want people to come in. So when you deliver value, you will get value back in return. That goes for delivering value in terms of creating an opportunity for someone to consume the content in the way that they want to consume it. So create those opportunities for people, all right? Blog posts need to be considered for podcasts just because people, whenever they're late at night, and I see this on my website almost every other day, late at night, like it's either late at night or early in the morning. And I think it's because early in the morning, because everyone's on the East Coast reading some of these blog posts. I will get either an opt-in on my website because of something that they're reading at like 4 a.m. People, like, think about it. Have you ever sat up late at night and have you ever read a blog post and then like, "Oh, there's a podcast. Let me listen to that." If it's answering the question for someone, you've probably done that. Or maybe it's something that you have done to entertain someone. You have to think about it in those terms. All right. So give your potential listener a reason to listen, provide the value. Now, here's a story in terms of transcriptions. Rev.com is the website that you should go to. This provides transcriptions for audio files, or you can do video files or whatever. If you go to it's rev.com. And just this week, I think it was this week or maybe it was last week, they just announced a new program where they are providing automated transcriptions. So how their service worked was that you sent it off to a transcriber, and then I think it was like $1 a minute or something like that. And if you had a 50-minute podcast, then it would cost you $50. Well, for me, I was like, I can't do $50, a pop for a podcast. But when they came out with this program, it was 10 cents a minute. And so you could potentially get a 30-minute podcast transcribed for $3. All right. So this is just something that you should be thinking about when it comes down to a lot of that. Let's see here. I'm going to share Andy's link. Andy has a link here. It says for a transcriber. So I'll show that link there. I see that Shayna. What if your show is generally long? I hope that answered your question, Shayna. I hope that answered your question about podcast transcription. So 10 cents a minute. Now, here's the thing, and I will say this. When you transcribe on automation isn't going to get every word right. This is why I recommend that you go through and you read and you create a better transcription, because it'll transcribe exactly how you speak, right? So you want to turn it maybe into something that's a little more readable. So you have to build into your schedule sometime to create an actual blog post. Now, when it comes to SEO for those transcriptions of those for that podcast, I want you to utilize header 1, header 2, header 3. Whenever you see in WordPress it says header, create a header for titling for a section. I want you to utilize the header because, and Bayerberg might know the answer to this, but from what I last recall, that when you used the headers, it was based on, I think, kind of an importance scale, right? Header 1 was the most important that could show up potentially in a search engine. So if someone searched out a particular term, that header might show up. So that's something that I think that is important for you to use. Make sure you're utilizing header. They're just not formatting options. They are for a search engine as well. All right. Let's see here. Titling your podcast. So here's titling your podcast. And this is like my biggest giveaway for this particular live feed for you today. This will help you out completely. So I'm going to go over this real quick. Title your podcast as something that is searchable. I've told Andy Lyons this in the past. I've told this to many of you guys in the past. But the rules are, when it comes down to your podcast, you may say that you want to do a podcast on sports, all right? But we have to think about what the rules are for what Google is allowing you to search out, all right? Or allowing someone to search out. And the easiest way to get traction to your podcast and your blog post is creating a title that is maybe the most common way to search something out. So let's say we wanted to know what Michael Jordan's or LeBron James's, let's say LeBron James, because it's more recent. Let's say, what is LeBron James's workout routine? Maybe that is a type of title for your podcast, if that is not already something that is written inside of Google. When someone types that in and the autocomplete comes up, you can see what people are searching for. So if you can make a variation of that in Google, that will help you out. Now, this isn't the piece of information that I'm telling you that is gold. This is the piece of information that is gold. Now, if you're a content creator and you're struggling with trying to figure out what type of content to create as a title for your podcast, write this down. I want you to write this down and have your pen ready. Go to the website answerthepublic.com. If you've never been to answerthepublic.com, your dreams for topic creation have just been answered. What answerthepublic.com is a website where you type in a particular keyword of the niche that you're involved in. And when you enter that keyword in, it will allow you to see what people are searching for. Basically, it's just pulling everything from Google and is putting it into different categories and images for you to look at and see what is being searched out the most, what is not being searched out the most. So when you go to answerthepublic.com, you can see the prepositions of what someone is searching out. You can see the and or of what something is being searched out. That's amazing for you. So that'll allow you to create better content. All right. So I recommend that you utilize answerthepublic.com. All right. Now let's talk about the best SEO for your podcast. What is the best SEO platform for your podcast? When we're talking about Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, and any other, Spotify, all that, we want to have the best platform that will allow us to be searched inside of those platforms. And the best one that I know of is Libsyn. And it's not because I have any type of deal with Libsyn. I'm not getting paid by Libsyn. It's just the most robust. When you fill out all the fields inside of Libsyn, when it comes to the show description of your podcast, the density of the keywords, all of that, when you create all of that and you combine it with blog posts or your episode show titles, it will help you become more searchable inside of Apple Podcasts and the other syndication platforms. So make sure that you're using Libsyn, all right? Now, there's a lot of people out there that like to use Anchor. They use Anchor because they want to get a podcast up and running, but it's not SEO friendly. Libsyn is so user-friendly, like Shana said, it's so user-friendly that you should be utilizing it. Now, make sure that I'm sorry, there's a gnat in here now because I've got windows open here. You can use Blueberry or Libsyn. Those are the two that I recommend that you're utilizing, all right? Now, let's talk about real quick tools for SEO when it comes to transcriptions and all that. If you're not using the Yoast plugin for your podcast, for your website, utilize the Yoast plugin. It will tell you all the fields that you need to be filling in, and it will give you scores and grades as to what is the best title for your podcast and whether or not it is dense enough to be searched inside of Google. So the Yoast plugin is a great one. Now, if you're someone who may be on a little bit more of a budget and you want to transcribe it, but you don't want to type it all out, what I recommend that you utilize, and I mentioned this last week, I recommend that you utilize is using Google Keyboard. I use it for my iPhone, And I know people already have it for Android, but the Google keyboard is probably the most accurate when you're talking about voice dictation. So I literally, if I were to go ahead and start maybe next week, what I'll do is I'll do a quick demo and I'll invite everyone to a Google Doc, and I'll go ahead and write that Google Doc out on my phone. You'll see how fast it is to create show notes for your podcast. All right. So that is something that I think is huge. Let's see here. I'm going to look at some comments here. Let's see here. Mike Henley, I do send my audio only to YouTube, but not video, not just enough time. Libsyn is super helpful for that distribution. So what I would recommend, Mike, is that I've done a video on this, and it's a controversial topic as far as whether or not you should put your audio onto YouTube. And all sources and indications say that you should not just be putting audio up on YouTube because it just doesn't get traffic. It's a video platform and utilized for video. You get better visibility when you're creating video like this for people to see that they're interacting. When it's just audio, yeah, I get it. And I know that there are people who listen to podcasts on YouTube, but you're getting a small fraction compared to what you would be getting on a device itself. All right. So to me, it's just kind of like, yeah, you're doing it, but I wouldn't say it's a waste of time, but to me, it's just not worth ruining my YouTube channel when I know that I could be putting better content on there. And I have a whole strategy that I will talk about how to utilize your YouTube channel with actual video to drive traffic back to your podcast. All right. So that's something that I would recommend, but you're more than welcome to continue doing that. I just know that there is the potential to have a YouTube channel dinged. I don't know if that is complete truth, but that's what I have heard when it's just audio and it's just a title card. So make sure that you're focusing on creating the content for the platform in which the platform is best known for. Okay. So let's see here. We have, you guys are just conversing back. Answer the public. That's awesome. Yes, George, Pocono Outdoors guy. Answer the public. That would be a great way to look for content. Is there any way to voice transcribe while doing a podcast at the same time? No, there is not, because the software is just not as smart. I mean, of course, there's going to be a lot of weird, awkward pauses. So that's just something that you would have to do. Maybe next week, what I will do is just as an example, I will do it for you and I'll show you what I can do with Google Voice. All right. Let's see here. Yes, tried answerthepublic.com, and it's pretty interesting format. Yes. So what I would take is variations of what those titles of those keywords are, and I would create them as a particular topic for a podcast. All right. Let's see. Okay. Just reading through some of these comments. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. I see some questions did come through on the particular Excel sheet, the spreadsheet that I have here. So if you have a question, down below is a link in the description of this particular page. Go ahead and hit that and ask your question inside of here so that I can read it, because I'm just kind of going through the comments, seeing if I missed anything. And so then I'm going to go to these questions here real quick. So I'm going to answer a question for Nessia. I think is how you say her name, Nessia. She says, why do I need a website for podcast growth? So I think I kind of answered that into today's session here. We're talking about being discovered via Google, being discovered via Apple Podcasts, but a website is mainly for Google. And since Google is the number one search engine out there, we need to also cater to the idea that people are searching for content on Google. So when you're creating and developing and building this content as a podcast, you have to also develop and build this content as text so that it can be searched by other people looking for the answer to something. All right. So that's just something that you have to think about. All right. Let's go to the next question. Do you have more traffic on a website or a podcast directory? I would say that you're going to have more traffic on a podcast directory as you continue to promote to it. But how I guess what I will be talking about more in the future is called a funnel. And you may have heard them as sales funnels, but what I'm talking about in terms of a funnel is I'm talking about something very similar, but you're talking about getting them into your universe. And typically how people discover you may be either through Apple Podcasts by doing a search, and that search is done by a particular keyword that you have done, or they have put it inside of Apple Podcasts, and that keyword may be in the show notes of your particular your podcast show notes. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, and I should mention it now. You're going to have 2 separate show notes. All right. The density of the show notes that are on your website need to be a lot thicker. The density on your Apple Podcast, they don't have to be as dense. All right. It can be only like, say, 150 words. And the reason why it's only going to be about 150 words is because most people are in Apple Podcasts and they're just kind of scrolling and they're just looking for something. I'll do a particular search, but make sure you have your keywords in there. I don't know whether or not it's all based on density or not, but I just do know that when I have searched out podcasts that I have created and I've gone ahead and I've driven traffic to them, they show up higher based off of the keywords, but it's all because I've driven traffic to that particular podcast, if that makes any sense. The importance is that you got to drive traffic to the podcast itself in order for it to start climbing on the charts. All right. So that's something that is important that you should focus on. So make sure that when you're going into Libsyn, your Libsyn show notes can be anywhere between 150 to 300 words, but your website has to have dense show notes. And that's a great place to put your transcriptions. Let's see. What do we got here? What do we got? Andy says, how do you get the hashtags above the title of the YouTube video? It's not a podcast question. So just real quick. So I'll just answer this for you, Andy. So the hashtags are going to be found in your settings of YouTube. So and you can go in there and put the hashtags. It's kind of hard to describe, but when you go in and you have the preset settings, you can just go ahead and put those hashtags in the description. It'll say something like, what do you want your description of each video to be when you do an upload, and you can just put those hashtags in. So when you do something in YouTube, instead of having to reload new links or hashtags, I just have it as a template. It's already saved inside of YouTube, and then it automatically populates when I upload a video. Great question, though. That's a great question. Let's see. How do I create a website? I've been struggling with this. Does Libsyn create it for you? So Mrs. Suarez, so Libsyn has like a very, very, very basic website, but it doesn't give you a lot of the capabilities that, say, a WordPress, Kajabi, or maybe even a Squarespace can do for you. A lot of these website domains, a lot of these website platforms are pretty easy, depending on the theme that you want to get. So it's going to be something that is up to you. All right. So you're going to have to think about that. I would just do a search inside of Google of how to build a website or how to build a Squarespace site. You're going to have to spend the money in order to build this stuff out. So that's just something that most podcasters who are making it happen will do. And I think it's also important to note that when you do have your podcast website, you are now creating a platform where you are now opening it up for the opportunity for monetization. I talk about this so much because podcasters are so hell-bent on the idea of wanting to monetize, but then they say, oh, well, this monetization platform, I want it just for sponsorships. Well, sponsorships just don't mean audio sponsorships. In radio, we take audio sponsorships and we turn them into web sponsorships, and we turn them into email sponsorships, and we turn them into something. So one sponsorship that starts out as an audio sponsorship can turn into multiple sponsorships for the same client. So if you have a platform that does get traffic and you'll want to see if this is something that is giving you traction through Google Analytics and seeing that you're getting traffic back and forth, you can now use your website as a platform for people to see that ad come up. All right. So that's something that is I think important for you to notice. Okay. Let's see here. Raphael. Oh, this is from Not a Mama, who's on Kajabi. Should I go back and add links in this blog on Kajabi, on a Kajabi site, links to Apple for my podcast? Yes, you should do that. Let's see here. Links to Apple for my, yes, I would send links to Apple, links to Google Play, and links to Spotify. People listen. You have to remember, people consume different ways. They have their favorite platforms. So make sure you're providing those platforms for them to consume. So make sure that you're adding those opportunities for them. Okay. Hi, Palmetto Coast Exotics. It's good to see you. I hope the snakes are going well. I hope the snakes are very well. Let's see here from Don. Show art same as logo. I think that's a question. So if you're asking, is the show art the same as a logo? I mean, your logo is basically show art, but I mean, I wouldn't just use the same logo for the same I wouldn't see. Here's how it would work. I would not use a logo for each show, the same logo for each show. I would have
maybe the logo incorporated in the image, but I would have different show art that is specific to that particular topic. You can get some pretty affordable stock images through Canva. I think they're $1 a piece if you decide to go ahead and use stock photo images on Canva. All right. So I hope that answers your question. If not, be a little more specific for me and I'll answer that for you. Richard O says, is tagging of value in Instagram posts? This is an interesting question. Yes, it is valuable as far as SEO is concerned. As far as being discovered in Google, it has no bearing. But inside of the environment of Instagram, it does have a lot of value and weight. And there's a whole strategy that goes into tagging your Instagram posts so that they can be delivered. Okay. This is just something that I think that as someone who is promoting their podcast, you have to understand the game of hashtagging inside of Instagram. So what I would recommend is that you go in and you do a search on, how to use hashtags in Instagram. It will show you how you can get traffic back to the images that you're creating. But make sure that when you're creating images, and just like I said earlier, when you're creating content, the content has to be of value in order to get value back. So if you're creating a podcast that is all, let's say, based on creating, or maybe your podcast is all about maintaining, let's say, I'm just kind of looking at things in my room right now. Let's say your podcast is all about maintaining good cat health. All right. Well, you might want to go into Instagram and do a search on particular hashtags about cats, maybe feline. I would look up hashtag feline, hashtag cats, hashtag, and any hashtag that is related to cats, and then see which ones have, I would say, like either 10 to 30,000 posts within those hashtags, and then utilize and collect those hashtags and put them on my next post. But your image has to be equally engaging. So if your cat is doing something silly or it's looking cute or whatever, post that, but make sure that you're putting whatever description that you are in the Instagram post and then hashtag it. Now, I'm not the super expert on hashtags. I know, like, there's my friends like Jen Herman who are really great at doing it, but that's how I use hashtags. That's how I get traffic. And sometimes if the image is appealing enough to people and it's hashtagged right and it gets enough traction, it will get a lot of posts. Like, I posted an image on Instagram where I was at a concert, and I was this guy said, he was like, dude, sign my chest. I'm like, come on, you want me to sign your chest? I'm like, this is not rock and roll. And so they ended up taking a picture of me signing my chest, and so then, or signing this guy's chest, and it's just ridiculous, right? I posted that to Instagram, and then I captioned it saying something like, said, sign boobs in radio, they said, and then of course it's a picture of the guy, and then I put like a little like unamused smiley face. That post got me something like 500 likes on Instagram, something like that. So when you hashtag it right and it's an engaging image, it will get traction. All right. So I hope that answers your question. If you have questions, go ahead and leave a question. Hit down below in the description. Hit that link, and then of course submit a question right there, and I will answer the best that I can here. We're at 56 minutes. Amazing. From Richard again. Would you please do a short video demoing the creation of this groovy intake form? Yeah, I can go ahead and do that for all of you guys. I'm glad that you guys like this intake form. That's great. Betty, is it too late to become successful in podcasting? No, it's not too late to become successful. Let's kind of think of it this way, all right? And in my newsletter today on my email, I shared out just some basic numbers. And I'm starting something actually from ground zero. All right, and it's a monetization implementation practice that I'm doing right now. Well, I'm not going to share with it right now, but you can be successful with your podcast or anything for the matter, because you have to think about how many people are in the world, and if you're taking a fraction of those people, it's still in the thousands, hundreds of thousands that may be searching for something that you are providing. Now, Betty, if you can answer in the chat below, what is it that you are podcasting about? And maybe I can help you kind of push you through that. All right. Let's see here. From Pocono Outdoors Guy, George, does Google/YouTube use captions to crawl content for SEO? I believe this answer is yes, but I can't be for sure. I've heard it in the past, I think. Don't quote me on that. But here's the thing. I do know that, and I'm not even great at it. I'm actually very poor at it, because what happens inside of YouTube and YouTube is that it auto creates captions. All right. Now, when you're creating accurate captions inside of YouTube for your podcast, it's for people who maybe need a translation, so you could have them auto transcribed into Spanish, or maybe you have them auto transcribed into Dutch. Doesn't matter. I mean, whatever it may be, so that they can read the captions on there. But I do know that it is valuable. I have heard this in the past, that it does help if you do transcribe them, because that's something that Google weighs a little heavier on your YouTube videos. So that will hopefully help you out there. Let's see here. I hope that answers your question. Let's see here. I'm going to read some of the comments in here. Let's see what Mike Henley, create your own Instagram hashtag that is not already in use, in addition to those hugely popular and those that are less popular. Also, don't edit your Instagram post. Leave it alone for 24 hours. Yes, he's right. So make sure that you have your Instagram post ready to go in order to deliver it. If you start editing it like almost immediately after, then it just pulls down the ranking and the visibility of it. So that is something that you should consider. He is right. Create your own hashtag and then incorporate the more popular hashtags so that you can start getting some traction into it. All right. And in your podcast itself, here's something that you should do inside of your podcast. I think one of the most important things that I just do not talk about, that I need to talk about more, is the relationship between you and your audience. It's very similar to what I see you guys doing here. I'm communicating with you on this YouTube live, and I'm talking with you, and I see you participating. You have to remember that the relationship that you are building between you and your listener, it's going to be symbiotic. They're going to appreciate what you are sharing if you are communicating with them. So if you're doing something that is a little more delayed in terms of an action that you want them to do, let's say like Instagram, and you're on your Instagram and you say, hey, if you're listening right now and you're out and about walking and you just happen to be on Instagram, make sure that you take a picture of wherever you are right now and hashtag it. You could just say like, I'll just use a phrase here, editing pull downs. Hashtag editing pull downs. And when I'll go in and I'll search the image and I'll like it and I'll leave a comment for you. So that way you're building some type of and form of a community with people so that you can get them in and developed into your universe. Now, I want to bring up another topic real quick, because this is something that I think is interesting that I did not bring up earlier. And it was something that happened today on Facebook. I'm sure that a lot of you guys are aware that Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp all had issues today. And I have brought this up in the past, and I want to bring it up again, and I will continue to bring it up over and over until you hate me. All right. You'll curse at me and you'll say until you go, all right, I get it. You cannot rely on social platforms to do the heavy load work for you. All right. It can do a lot of the work for you, but don't rely on them, because when you have an issue like Facebook going down all in the 3 platforms, and if you're trying to promote out that way, you're not going to be able to communicate with these people. And so even though I think it's great that you would be promoting on these platforms, still an email list is something that delivers to people's inbox. Whether it goes to spam or not is going to be up to the deliverability and whether or not you're building trust with your potential email subscriber. All right. But what you have to remember is that the one thing that will always work is email. Now, we can always go to Twitter and promote that way, but what if your audience isn't on Twitter? We have to work towards this idea of building an email list out by using something like a MailChimp. Not a mama, she uses my platform, Kajabi, because it makes it so wildly easy to use and create email lists. So I want you to remember that when you're developing and building and pulling these people into your universe by creating hashtags and Instagram posts and Twitter posts and all that, that you're eventually trying to lead them into an email marketing funnel. All right. And maybe one of these days I will illustrate how that all works. Okay. So let's see here. Let me go into the comments here real quick. Shelly Aaron, I appreciate your comment about building relationships. Yes, you have to build relationships. So when I'm on the radio every night, I am building relationships every single night. Now, back in the day when Facebook and MySpace was around, it wasn't as prominent. And the thing is that I was only able to do this one-way communication. It was just me speaking into a microphone and going on. That's very similar to what podcasting is. So I had to kind of just rely on the fact that I needed to say to people and go, hey, if you're listening right now and you're in the car, make sure you give me a call, 602-260-9800, and I will, well, let's talk, and then maybe I'll put you on the air. And that was kind of an incentive because they wanted to hear their voice on the air, all right? What's interesting about today is that when I'm building communication and building that relationship with people, it's not necessarily, hey, give me a call and on the phones, because people don't, I mean, who uses a phone these days? I mean, let's be honest. When someone calls you, you look at the phone, you're like, ugh, like, I don't want to answer that, right? So people are very rarely using the phone unless the incentive is in their benefit, right? So what I have done with radio and seen the evolution of how it all works is that when I get on the radio and I say, hey guys, what's going on? It's the Shaman. Today we're going to talk about blank, 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 blank. By the way, if you want to reach out to me on Facebook, do so. Go hit me up on my inbox in Messenger and I'll get back to you and I'll say hi to you on the radio. For whatever reason, that works almost just as well, if not better, because they love the fact that they were able to communicate right back. And what's interesting is that the relationship that I have developed and built with them is that I have actually gotten the phone, I have taken a selfie of myself, and I sent it directly back to them of me in the studio in front of the logo so that it looks authentic. So I want you to create that authenticity with your audience by driving them to an area to where they may be on the internet, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and foster that interaction, that relationship with them, eventually to hopefully get them on an email list so they can become closer to your universe. I hope that makes sense. All right. Let's see. Let's see. I got to answer. Palmetto Coast. Oh, man, that's a great idea. Great live. I have a work call now. Thank you so much for showing up, Nessie. I appreciate it. Great questions today. I got one question from Mrs. Suarez I want to answer before I jump here shortly, and then I'll get ready for next week and get ready to deal with no AC here in the house. Mike Henley, got to keep up the great work. Thank you so much. Only live show I follow. Thank you so much. Is MailChimp still a leading mail list service? Yes, MailChimp is. Agree, we should all be doing what you are doing live. Yes, I think so. So just as a quick thing, well, before I forget, I want to remember this. If you haven't liked this video, down below, like the video and share it out onto your Twitter, okay? And let people know that we're doing this live right now. Let me see. Agree, we should all say, I'll use your contact to email you more about the RSS. Yes, I have a my podcast to do checklist shows you all about the RSS feed and how to utilize it. So that should be able to help you out a little bit more. Okay. What else do we have? Just looking here, making sure that I didn't miss anything. All right, let me answer one more question. And it was from Mrs. Suarez. She actually asked a very, very interesting question. All right. Actually, let me answer two questions because Lennox Addo last week asked a question, and he asked it's a very simple. I think I kind of answered it, but he says one last question: thumbnail graphics. Any suggestions on how to get/create one? So Canva.com is a great place if you're a beginner in graphic design. I mean, they make it stupid easy for you to use their graphics. So that's one way. And then if you're talented enough in Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator, you know, I'm good in Illustrator. I'm good enough to be dangerous. So what I would recommend that you do is that I would look in Illustrator because you could do a lot more in Illustrator and Photoshop and make really, really cool graphics. All right. So that's something that you should do. And then of course, if you have a question, go ahead and ask it in the on the link down below. And if I don't get to it this week, because this is going to be my last question, I'll get to it next week. All right. So this is going to be a long question, and it's going to be related to Facebook from Mrs. Suarez. She says, my husband has been sharing his podcast on a Facebook group that is not his, but he also posts on his Facebook group page. But people have been wanting to join the other group, thinking he's associated with that group, and he forgets to promote his Facebook group page so people can join. The group that he has been posting started with 50 individuals, and now they've grown to 945. My question is, I told him to post it to his Facebook page and direct them to the group page so they can share it. Am I correct on saying this? Now, I will say this. What is his objective for his podcast and I guess the overall scope of what he wants to do. What is that objective? All right. And if it were me in this situation, I would have no problem posting in that other group. But inside of my podcast, I would be driving people to my group and I would be promoting to my group and I would be getting people on an email list so I can drive them to my group. That's what I would do. That's the most important thing I think you can do. Promotion is promotion. I mean, no promotion is bad promotion. It's just promotion. All right. And if you can get that promotion in, that's great. But he needs to really I wouldn't say he needs, but he should consider positioning what he's saying inside of the podcast and positioning what he is saying inside of wherever he's posting. If he's posting specifically just on a Facebook page, he needs to direct them to the group. Now, the other thing that he should be doing on his Facebook page is that he should be linking that group page to his Facebook page itself. So the actual group can be linked to a business page itself. And when you drive traffic, well, not necessarily drive traffic, but if you say do a Facebook Live, because I do this all the time. When you do a Facebook Live, you get a lot of this passive traffic that comes through and they start looking at your page and then looking and then they see, oh, he's got a group. And then they'll want to add themselves to that group. Now, I have a group on my Facebook page that is linked, but it's a private group and it's a paid group and they have to be paid in order to access that group. All right. So have him figure out what his objective is for the overall scope of the business or the podcast itself, because likely most of you guys here are creating a podcast and you want to make it and turn it into something that is more than just what you're doing. You're already investing in the money of the microphones, the mixing board, the computers, the webcams, the lights, everything. And you want to say, okay, well, how do I justify all this? Well, your scope has to be put in place. Now, I can't talk about scope and developing your scope now. Maybe I'll talk about it in the future, how we can really, really narrow that down, but have him focus on his scope first so that he knows where he wants it to go. If you ever have gone into my universe and are on my email list, you know that everything leads back to my newsletter and then all the other pieces, my social areas, those are the ancillary pieces. So when we're doing YouTube, I get to communicate with you here, all right? But I eventually would love to have people on my newsletter list so that they know that I'm available for them at any time and I'm providing value to them. So have him really think about his scope, okay? Let me jump in and let me look at some comments here. Palmetto Coast Exotics. Canva is incredible. I use it damn near daily. I'm glad. Yes. Jangy Man, by the way, YouTube pops out of live mode once in a while. I guess this is due to stream lag. However, how can a viewer avoid this? You just have a better connection. I don't even have the best connection sometimes. I know it records, but sometimes don't have the best connection. It's best if you're connected through your Ethernet cable, but most computers, especially if you're using a Mac, they don't have that. Well, they have the Ethernet lightning port that goes into the back of or into the side of the computer. Of course, and then they take you for all the money that they want because you need to buy the little adapter that costs like whatever, $20, and then you can do an Ethernet connection. But Wi-Fi should be fine, but you also have to remember whenever you're considering this stuff, and this is a problem that I ran into a couple of years ago. My internet kept dropping out and it kept dropping out and kept dropping out. And I was like, why is this happening? And I called my internet service provider and they're like, oh yeah, it's because your modem's bad. So then I had to get a brand new modem. And once I replaced the modem, then it fixed. So that might be a problem too. So just kind of consider that. In this place that I live in, I have block walls. It's all cinder block walls. So I don't get the best reception on some of my Wi-Fi, but I have boosters. I have boosters I bought from Best Buy, and the Wi-Fi boosters do a little bit better of a job for me. So it's a little easier that way. Let me see here. Let me see if I have any more questions here. I'm going to show Bearberg's link there. If you want a free tool for images, you could try Pablo.buffer. There's some other image tools that I know that I can't think of them right now. When I think of them, I'll try to share them on my email newsletter if you are looking for those. I do have a video on YouTube that talks about how to create images for your podcast. Go look it up, and it might have the links in there in the description, so you might want to go find that. All right. This is Suarez. That is what I was telling him. Thank you so much. You're welcome. He says, you are right. He believes you more than me. Well, that's how family is, right? I guess. I don't know. But Mr. and Mrs. Suarez, I'm glad that we can get you moving in the right direction forward. So if there are no other questions, I want to thank all of you guys for sharing this live feed out and participating. You guys are amazing for showing up, dedicated humans to be a part of this community and be a part of these live feeds. It means a lot to me. If you ever have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me on Twitter at the Shanman. But the best way, like I said earlier, the best way is to reach out to me on my email is info@theshanman.com. And I will get back to you as soon as I humanly possibly can, and get back to you with a quality comment. And so just remember, and I'm going to leave you with this particular piece of advice when it comes down to you and your podcast. And it's more about a philosophy than anything else. When you're jumping into the marketplace and you want to see a return on whatever you're doing, develop and build value into the content that you are creating, so that whenever you develop that value in the content that you're creating, you receive value back in feedback. It could be monetary, it can be in comments, it could be in whatever. So develop and become a person of value, so that when you become a person of value, you develop valuable things for value to come back. So I'm going to leave you with that. Think about that. I hope it really helps you out. I want to thank Shelly. Aaron, Shelly, we need to talk and text and call each other and see what we're up to and see how we can reach out. And you're amazing. I love you. Elizabeth Zawalski, she's all part of my little Shan Clan fam over on my radio station site, but she's now jumping into this space. So thank you so much for being a part of this. Next week, I'm going to do another video. I don't know what the topic is, but if you have a topic you want me to talk about, go ahead and enter it inside of the form that is below this video where it says ask a podcast question. I will go ahead and maybe make that a particular video for next week so we can talk a little bit about that. All right. And just jump into that. Okay. Jangy Man, thanks a lot, Shan. Now I know when your regular live show is. Cheers. Yes. And make sure you're sharing this out with your other podcast friends so that they know they can come in and learn a little bit more. We can rap and chat and do whatever. It is my goal also to try to get you guys on webcam as well. Maybe be a little bit more intimate. So we'll try to figure out how we can do that with certain platforms that I know of. So in the meantime, for those of you who are in the United States, enjoy your 4th of July. Stay safe. Have a great time with your family. And for those of you outside of the United States, have a great Thursday. Thank you so much for everything that you do and what you provide on this particular channel. Leave comments after this video is over. Leave comments so that we can push this video up in the news feed of YouTube so that I can get more people to have eyes on it. Okay. In the meantime, you guys are great. Thank you so much, George, Mike, Janky Man, everyone, Bearberg. Be good, man. And I'll talk to you guys really, really soon. Take care. See ya.